Hello. Testing, testing. Am I audible? Yeah? Okay. Hello, JS Count Budapest. Woo. Can I request all of you to please stand up? All of you, please. Yeah. So we'll do just a small physical activity, just a small exercise just to warm up ourselves, okay? So please put your hands up like this. Yeah? 1, 2, count with me please. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Here goes the last one. 10. Awesome. Thank you so much. Please take your seats. So, as Tejas mentioned, we had a talk yesterday from Shikhar about how you can protect your web applications against token theft using the browser APIs. In my talk, I'm going to deep dive into how you can encrypt the data in the browser using web crypto APIs to enhance the security of your web applications. So before I dive in, let me quickly introduce myself to all of you. So CS Talk, hi everyone. I am an open source enthusiast and open source maintainer, one of the core maintainers of Excalibur, Mermaid to Excalibur, React tags, and more libraries. And I also lead the FOSS meetups in Bangalore. FOSS basically stands for Free and Open Source Software. And yeah, these are my socials. I would love to connect with all of you if you want to talk about front-end, open source, JavaScript, Canvas, anything. I'm all in for that. So yeah, let's connect. And let's get started with the talk. So what exactly is encryption in simple words? You take a plain text, lock it with a key, get some gibberish, unreadable text, which is a ciphertext. That's encryption. Take the ciphertext, unlock it with some key, and you get back the original plain text. So this is encryption and decryption in very simple words. There are basically two types of encryption. First is symmetric encryption, where Alice and Bob are exchanging messages, and they use the same secret key to encrypt and decrypt the messages. And the second one is asymmetric encryption, where Alice is using Bob's public key to encrypt the data, whereas Bob is using his own private key to decrypt the data. Now, let's look into what happens in a client-server architecture when there is an exchange of messages. So this content or the messages are encrypted in the network transit because of HTTPS, TLS, but you are still storing the content in raw format in the server. And what if the server gets compromised for some reason at some point of time? The data could get breached too. So how about this model, where you can, instead of relying on the network transit to encrypt the content, let's first encrypt the content on the client, on the browser, send the same encrypted content over the network, and store the same encrypted content on the server. This way, when the server, for some reason, if it gets compromised, the data is still safe. And server doesn't have any knowledge about how to decrypt the content. So that gives you the maximum security as well. And this basically, this entire process is known as end-to-end encryption. So now, to encrypt the data on the client, we have something called web crypto APIs. They have evolved a lot over time, and it has like great support over majority of the web browsers, as you can see. And this Window.crypto API is majorly divided into 3 main categories. The first is get random values, random UUID, and subtle. I am mainly going to talk about the subtle, Crypto.subtle API. The name subtle is basically because these are very low-level APIs, and they have some strict and subtle requirements which you need to satisfy to get the maximum security out of it. And all these APIs are available in secure mode, which is HTTPS, except for the get random values, which is also available in the non-secure mode. So I would like to take a little bit of time to talk about get random values. We have this function mat.random in JavaScript already to generate the random numbers. Then why do we need crypto.getRandomValues? Any of you has actually noticed this in the MDN docs? Okay, so basically it says that mat.random is not good, or is not a good option when it comes to security if you want to, generate cryptographically strong random numbers. The reason is that it has very low entropy, and the algorithm which it uses, basically these numbers are not really random. There is some algorithm which is running behind the scene, and you are basically generating some pseudo-random numbers. And the algorithm which mat.random uses, it is prone to, like you can actually, if you observe the pattern, you can actually determine what next number is going to be, you can predict the numbers which are generated by mat.random. So that's the reason you should not use it. And crypto.getRandomValue has a very high entropy, and it generates, the numbers are not guessable at all. So that's why you should use crypto.getRandomValues when you are dealing with security. So I had this very much curiosity on how is it possible to predict the mat.random values, because to me it just generates random values. How can someone predict it? So I came across this very interesting article just a few days back. It's by Douglas Goddard, and it's a very old article back in 2016, where there was this powerful jackpot worth $1.5 million, and Los Angeles actually generated, released a simulator which will generate the generate the random numbers, and you have to just guess those random numbers to win the lottery. And this simulator was using mat.random behind the scenes. So Douglas Goddard actually digged a lot deeper into it and also looked into how basically these numbers are generated. When you use mat.random, basically your browser is responsible to generate the numbers. So he looked into the V8 engine and looked into the code, and he shared a Python script in this article, which basically you can try out yourself to actually see how mat.random actually predicts the numbers. So I'll not be deep diving into this. This is not scope of the talk. But yeah, you can actually, if you're interested, do look into this article. It's really a great article. And I have a quick demo to just show you, because I really loved it. So I just want to share it with you. So let's actually generate 5 random numbers. And I'll just pick up the first 5 numbers from here. And this is the Python script. Let's not go dig into it right now, but yeah, you can actually look into it later. And I'll just paste these numbers. Now you can see, basically mat.random uses some internal states to predict the numbers. These are the states which you see. And these are the predicted next set of numbers. So let's look into it if the numbers are predicted. So if you see 9768 here, if you see 828, 1 second. Let me just generate it again. Yeah, you see the numbers here. I'm not able to see. 1 second. Did I copy it correctly or not? For some reason, I'm not able to see the numbers here. Give me a second. Yeah, I'll do it once more just to be on the safer side, to make sure that I actually copied it correctly. Let me try to run it once more. Yeah, now you can see, you can see this 4534 here in the 6th index. You can see 2261667, that's also present here. You can see 0.7769 to it, that's also present here. If I actually generate it again, you will see the other numbers as well, 0.4423753, it's also here, 222, it's also here. So all the numbers, I'm actually able to predict it. And this actually really solved my curiosity. And yeah, under the hood, it's basically a combination of bitwise XOR and shift operations. You can look into it later if you're interested. But yeah, this is something I wanted to show because I really loved when I came across this article. So yeah. Now, I was talking about the performance thing as well, like why crypto.getRandomValues has a very high entropy compared to mat.random. So just to give you a glance, if I try to generate, like, let's say 1,000 random numbers, you will see that mat.random is taking 0.1 millisecond versus crypto.getRandomValues takes 3.2 milliseconds, which is like mat.random is very fast. If I increase it more, it's 1.7 millisecond versus 24 milliseconds. And if I increase it further, it's very significant difference, 11 milliseconds versus 109 milliseconds. So crypto.getRandom has a very high entropy, and that's why it's slower as well. So depending on whatever things you are dealing with, choose the appropriate API. But yeah, when it comes to security, always go ahead with the crypto.getRandom values. So let's come to the crypto.settle API and have an overview of how this API works. It's only available in HTTPS, as I mentioned earlier. It has all the generic APIs, which means that it doesn't have different APIs for different algorithms. Rather, it has the same API, but the parameters change depending on the algorithm. That's why all the APIs are generic. It deals with only binary data, which means the input and the output of all these crypto.settle APIs is always going to be binary data. And all the APIs will return promises, which means we are going to use async await a lot as well. So yeah, now with this, it's also supported in Node.js as well. So you can actually use this API from global.this.crypto in Node.js, or you can require the Node Crypto module and use the Web Crypto APIs. So it's basically write once and run everywhere. You don't need any other particular Node module to actually use this API. So it's basically supported in Node.js. And yeah, so crypto.settle has all these APIs. In my talk, I'm going to cover these APIs: encrypt, decrypt, generate key, derive key, import key, and export key. So as I mentioned earlier, we are going to deal a lot with binary data because the input and the output of the crypto.settle APIs is always binary data. So we have typed arrays to actually deal with binary data. Typed arrays are basically array-like views which help you to manipulate the binary data in the browser. And these are the typed arrays which are supported. And we are going to cover uint8 array in this talk. U basically stands for unsigned, which means it takes only positive numbers. Int is basically integer. 8 is 8-bit, the size of the array, which is between 0 to 255, 2 to the power 8 minus 1. And yeah, so let's consider this stream of bytes. What happens internally is this stream of bytes gets divided into 8-bit segments because it's an uint8 array. Each segment is actually converted to its equivalent decimal value. And this is what you actually see in the browser when you actually view the uint8 array. So this is how you can use it. You can actually initialize it with some size, and it gets initialized with all zeros. You can initialize it with some value, and it will get initialized with those values. You can use the text encoder.encode API to actually convert a string to bytes, because we need to convert every possible thing into bytes to actually make it compatible with this API. And you can represent emojis as well. So yeah. So before we actually decide which encryption algorithm we are going to use, there are a couple of things which we need to satisfy. First thing is confidentiality, which means that when I share some data with you, only we both have the keys to actually encrypt and decrypt the data. So no one else should have the access to the data. No one else should be able to encrypt or decrypt the data. So that is confidentiality. Integrity. When I share some data with you, and if that data gets tampered for some reason, some eavesdropping happens in the transit, you should be able to verify whether that data was tampered. And if that data was tampered, there should be some warning, or the operation should just fail. Last is authenticity, which is if I'm sharing some data with you, you should know that is it me who has actually sent you the data, or is it someone else? So integrity and authenticity actually go in parallel with each other. So there are these algorithms which are supported. RSA is an asymmetric algorithm, and AES is Advanced Encryption Standard is a symmetric algorithm. I'm going to cover AES in this talk. And there are various modes: counter mode, Cypher blockchain, and Galois counter mode. So I have a quick demo to show how these APIs actually work. So let's actually go to the demo. Let me just type some message here. I am thrilled to be speaking at JSConf Budapest, okay? And let me just encrypt it. So this is the output. This is basically the encrypted content I'm getting, and right now I'm using the CTR mode. So let me go and decrypt this content. So this works fine. Now let me just change the bytes. Did you see the AM changed to AC, which means that the data was tampered? If I even change it here, in case you haven't noticed it, do you see? I changed to I6. So basically the data is tampered, but still on your end, when you decrypt the data, you will see this. So you will never know that data was actually tampered, which is bad. You should be able to know that the data was actually changed in the transit. So we cannot use CTR because it doesn't satisfy the requirements. So let's try it with a CBC mode. Now let me copy this and see how it works in the CBC mode. So this looks fine. Now let me actually temper the data a bit. Do you notice that still the decryption is not really failing? You are still seeing the data, parts of the data is still visible. And this is not something which we want. It's again not giving you the integrity and the authenticity which you want. Let's check the third one, GCM. Now let's see how it works. Let me try to decrypt the content. This is fine. Now let me tamper the data here. And this fails. This is what we want. The integrity, because it just checked that, okay, the data was tampered and it just failed. This is what we want. And hence, GCM is the most recommended when it comes to security. It has the maximum security. So yeah, please use the GCM mode if you have the option. Always go ahead with the GCM mode. So with this, I can summarize it that, okay, CTR provides confidentiality, but not integrity or authenticity. CBC provides confidentiality, but not integrity and authenticity. And GCM provides all the three requirements which we want. So let's go ahead with the GCM mode. And basically, GCM also uses counter mode internally, but it has this authentication tag, which it adds at the end of the encrypted content, which is a 16-byte tag. And this is how it internally verifies the authenticity. If you tamper the data, the authentication tag actually gets tampered as well, and it just fails. So yeah, so let's go ahead with AES-GCM. And there are a few things which we need to understand when it comes to using the web crypto APIs. The first one is the crypto key. Now, what exactly is a crypto key? Crypto key is basically an opaque representation of a cryptographical key. You cannot really view the bytes of the crypto key, even if you are the one who has generated the crypto key. So it just gets generated and you cannot interact with it. What you have access to is only these 4 parameters which you can see in the JSON. So you can check the type of the crypto key, whether it's a secret key or a public key, the algorithm which is used to generate the crypto key, what is the usage of this crypto key, is it encryption, decryption, signing, verification, what is the purpose, whether it's extractable. This is the most interesting parameter and my favorite too. So as I mentioned, you cannot really view the bytes of the crypto key, but at the time of generation, you can say that whether you want to extract the bytes of the crypto key later, if you set this to true. And we have APIs for it, which I'll cover in a bit, but this parameter is set to false by default. So if you want to extract the bytes later, you have to set this parameter to true. So yeah, and we are going to use AES-GCM 128-bit encryption algorithm. 128 basically stands for the length of the crypto key. And yeah, so length of the crypto key is going to be 16 bytes, 128 bits. And there is something called IV, which this algorithm needs. And it's recommended to use at least 12-byte IV. You can use more, but not less. IV is nothing but just a random set of random numbers, which makes this algorithm more stronger and harder to decrypt. So don't worry about IV, it's just a fancy name and it's just a set of random numbers. So let me just go to a quick demo for showcasing how this algorithm works. So let me actually type in here a message again. JSCon Budapest is absolutely amazing. And you can see this is the data in bytes which you are seeing. It's basically the bytes representation of the content. Let me generate a crypto key here. So now if I try to view the crypto key, it says key is not extractable. Because as you can see, the extractable parameter is actually set to false here. Now if I actually, let me mark it true and try it again. And now if I try to view it, I am able to view the crypto key. Basically the bytes of the crypto key. So now let me actually try to encrypt the data. Now if you see here, as I'm clicking on the encrypt button multiple times, the encrypted output and the IV is actually changing, even though the content still stays the same. So for the outer world, the content the output is actually changing, which is an illusion that, okay, the input might be changing, but in reality, the input is still the same. It is still the same sentence. JSConf Budapest is absolutely amazing. So this is possible because you have Ivy, and Ivy randomizes the encrypted output, and Ivy should never be reused. You should always use a different Ivy for every encryption. If you reuse the same Ivy, then the purpose of randomization is lost, and the pattern can be actually predicted. So that is the reason Ivy helps in making your algorithm more stronger. So let's actually now try to decrypt the data. So it needs the output. Let me just paste it here. It needs the encryption key as well, so let me copy it. And it needs the Ivy as well, so let me copy the Ivy. This failed. I just copied the parameters. Can anyone tell me why did this process fail? What? Yes, because I changed the Ivy here. So let me put it back. And this works now, right? So, thank you. So this means that whenever you are encrypting a data, you need the exact same Ivy to decrypt the data as well. That's a learning from here, so let's keep a note of it, that you need the exact same Ivy when you decrypt the data as well. So let's move on to the slides. So let's actually build a simple note-taking to-do list app. And we have two requirements. We want it to be end-to-end encrypted, and we also want to add an ability to share notes. So if I want to share some notes with you, I can actually share it with you. So let's actually first talk about end-to-end encrypted, like how to add the end-to-end encryption. So you have the encrypt API looks like this. It needs the name, the Ivy, the crypto key. Every algorithm needs the crypto key, and it also needs the note, but in bytes. As I mentioned earlier, the input and output of all the crypto.subtle APIs is always going to be in bytes. So let's go through this one by one. How do we actually generate the Ivy? Ivy is basically just a set of random numbers. So you just create a uint data array with 12 bytes, fill it with random numbers using the crypto.getRandomValues, your Ivy is ready. Next, we need a crypto key. So we have an API for it, crypto.subtle.generate key. It needs the name of the algorithm, the length of the crypto key, extractable parameter, let's set it to true. I'll explain later why this is needed, but for now, let's accept that it is going to be set to true. And we are going to use it for encryption and decryption. So once this API promise is resolved, this is what you get. The crypto key, which I showed you a couple of minutes back. Extractable is set to true. The type is secret. The usage also looks good. So crypto key is also done. Now note in bytes. Again, this is pretty simple. Just take in the note and use the text encoder.encode API, and you will have the output in bytes. So yeah, we have all the three parameters done. Just let's wait for the promise to be resolved, and you have the encrypted buffer. Now, as I mentioned earlier, that we need the exact same Ivy to decrypt the content as well. And Ivy is not something which you really want to hide from the entire world, because we are going to generate an Ivy for every encryption, and this is just a random numbers. So since we need the exact same Ivy for decryption, we can actually upload this along with the encrypted buffer to the server as well. So this is one way of doing it, of sharing the Ivy when you want to share it with someone so that they can fetch it from the server. So let's actually upload this to the server. So yeah, with this, the data is actually now encrypted. We have successfully uploaded the data along with the Ivy to the server. Now I need some way to actually share the notes. And for that, the Ivy thing is done. I need some way to distribute the crypto keys as well. I need some way so that I can share the keys with you as well. And what is the most secure way to do it? Let's look at this URL. It has a scheme, domain, path, query, and fragment. So what is this fragment? We actually use this very often. Can anyone tell me where do you see this fragment parameter most often? GitHub, README, Markdown for navigating, right? Is this parameter ever sent to the server? This parameter is never sent to the server. So we can actually take advantage of this browser behavior, and we can actually share the crypto keys right after the hash. So let's try that out. And as I mentioned earlier, we have APIs to export extract the bytes of the crypto key. And for that, these are the exported formats. It has raw, PKCS8, which stands for Public Key Cryptography Standards, SPKI stands for Subject Public Key Info, and JSON Web Key. So it's basically like raw is supported for AES, HMAC, and elliptical public keys. PKCS8 is supported for RSA and elliptical private keys. SPKI is supported for RSA and elliptical public keys. And JWK is actually supported for all. So I'll go ahead with JWK. So tomorrow, if I change the algorithm, I can still keep the same exported format. So let's go ahead with JWK. And this is how the JWK looks like. It has all these parameters. It has the algorithm, the extract parameter. What I'm interested in is the K parameter. This is basically the encryption key. So I'm referring it to as encryption key because it's different from the crypto key. Crypto key is where you cannot view the bytes. Encryption key is basically exported from of the crypto key. So let's refer it to as encryption key. And this is what I want to share with you. So yeah, you just use the export key API, give it the format, and just extract the K parameter. Just extract the K parameter, and then just create the URL, and we are ready to share the URL. So let's assume that we have hosted it somewhere, secretnotes.com, and I'll just share this URL with you. And I'll basically have the notes ID as well, so you can fetch it from the server, and I have the encryption key. So now I have done my part. Now, when you actually receive this URL, you have to decrypt the data at your end. So the first thing you will do is you have the notes ID, which you have to fetch from the server to get the payload, and you have the encryption key. So first, let's just fetch the content from the server. Now we want to decrypt the content. So this is exactly same as the encrypted encryption API. It needs the IV, original IV, crypto key, and the encrypted buffer. So in the payload, we already have these two parameters, right? We just uploaded it to the server. Along with IV, we also uploaded the encrypted buffer. So let's actually retrieve the first 12 bytes, which is the IV, and the rest is the encrypted buffer. And then what I'm left is the crypto key. Do you have the crypto key with you? Any guesses? Do you have the crypto key with you? What you have is the exported bytes of the crypto key, right? You have the encryption key with you. But this API is compatible with the crypto key. So we need to go back to the crypto key again from the K value which we had gotten, the encryption key which we got. So let's do the reverse engineering process here. I have the K parameter. I'll add all the attributes which are remaining. And this is basically the JSON web key format which I was talking about. And the extractable parameter, if you notice, is set to false here because we don't need to be extractable anymore, and we are just going to use it for decryption. So yeah, now once this is done, similar to export key, we have the import key API, and you just get back the crypto key once you pass it through the import key API. So we have the crypto key, and we just call the decrypt API, and that's it. You get the data. And since you have encoded the data, so you decode the data. So this is the same hash thing which I just mentioned. In Excalibur also, you will notice that it happens in the same way. When you share a link for your drawings, the encryption key is actually shared just right after the hash. So yeah, now the last thing which I want to add here is a password protection layer. So even someone has access to your machine, they can still not see the notes because they need the password to unlock it. So how we can add the password protection layer to it? So for that, let's understand what is hashing. Hashing is basically take some string and you pass it to, let's say, SHA-256, and you will get a fixed output, fixed length of bytes as the output. You change the string, still the output length is actually fixed. You take a long multi-line string, still the length of the output is fixed. It's 256 bits. But this process is not reversible. You can never get the original message from the digest. So keeping this in mind, this is basically hashing. We have PBKDF2 algorithm, which basically helps you to derive the crypto key from a user password. So what you do is you actually take a user-generated password, and you pass it to PBKDF2 SHA-256, which for the hashing algorithm, we will be using SHA-256. And we add some salt to it. Salt is basically similar to IV, just a set of random numbers. And we iterate this at least 100K times. That is the recommended number of iterations, which means this algorithm will turn out to be slower because of these many iterations, but that is because we want to generate a strong cryptographic key. And you get the cryptographic key based on the algorithm which you are using. So yeah, coding, in the code, it will look like this. The password is a string. You want to convert it to bytes. And then you pass it to the import key so that you can actually get the crypto key out of the password. The base crypto key, this is not the actual crypto key because we haven't really run it through the iterations yet with PBKDF2. So you get the password crypto key. And then we add some salt, similar to Ivy, and just pass it to the derived key algorithm, where we mentioned that how many iterations we want and what is the name of the algorithm, and for which algorithm you are actually going to derive this crypto key, which is AES-GCM. And we are going to use it for encryption and decryption. And once this is done, you have the crypto key. So yeah, now this is basically going to help you to add the password protection layer. One last thing which I want to share is there is this fun side project which I made as a result of learning about crypto APIs. And this uses AES-GCM under the hood and PBKDF2 for adding the password protection layer. So let me just add some string here. Maybe Anjana and Tejas are the best MCs, and yeah, and we have some password, and we encrypt it. So it just basically gives you the encryption instead of those boring bytes. It gives you in emojis. You can also change it to math or Latin symbols. Emojis is my favorite, so the name also is Cryptmoji. And now if I copy this and paste it here and add the password, I get the original text here. So yeah, you can actually check it out. And yeah, let's just do a quick recap of what we have learned so far. Different types of encryption, symmetric and asymmetric. Web crypto APIs have good support in majority of the browsers and Node.js as well. Typed arrays to deal with binary data, crypto.get random values to generate the randomized numbers. Various AES modes and AES-GCM is recommended as it provides integrity and authenticity as well. Crypto.subtle for encryption and decryption in browsers. Usage of fragment hash to share the secret keys because that part is never sent to the server. Various export key formats and usages. PBKDF2 for deriving the crypto key from password. Of course, the more number of iterations, it will make it slower, but as stronger as well. And one question to all of you is, can you actually add end-to-end encryption in your app or maybe some specific parts of your app, depending on whether the server really needs to see the data? So think about it and we can discuss it later. And yeah, these are some other amazing talks which I really came across, which talk about encryption using the browser crypto APIs. So you can watch these talks. Yeah, I really liked these talks and learned a lot from it. And this GitHub repo, I have added all the resources and the demos and the project whichever I showed today. So yeah, you can actually check it out and run it in your machines and let me know how you feel. And I'm an independent open source developer, so yeah, please support my open source work. You can take a look at the GitHub sponsorship profile for the same. And that's it from my side. Thank you so much. And yeah, thank you so much, and shout out to the organizers and the amazing MCs for keeping up the energy of the conference. Yeah.